on, you bastard!
Dude, you can't just go a whole month without making a video.
Look, I'm trying, but this is like a 7-hour mega project. I don't have time for this shit.
Well, guess what? I don't care. Winners don't make excuses. Review this. There you go. You're welcome.
Okay. From the outset, I feel like I've been Collaborative's biggest hater. From the very first release, I've been riding on the shitting train due to one simple factor. The focus just is not there. Why make any of the toys actually good from the ground up when you can instead only focus on the vehicles and nothing else? Never mind that Studio Series does this literally on a quarterly basis, why would you actually bother putting any effort into any other mode when people are just gonna leave it in vehicle mode and call it a day? Even when the franchises are all in-house, they seem to f up every single robot mode and conversion time and time again. And at an inflated price point that makes you wonder why you wouldn't just buy a standard Transformer. And sure, there are exceptions to the rule. There are rare times when they somehow luck out and deliver an actually good experience. Usually when they retool an existing mold and it's so good it practically can't be ruined as hard as they try. But more often than not, it's an easy skip for me. And yet, irrespective of logic, I always find myself being drawn back to them. What if they actually did well this time? What if they actually improved things? What if somehow it was all ultimately worth it? Well, perhaps it's actually even worse if lightning does strike, because it'll have me second guessing constantly in the future as time goes on. Greetings, Cybertronians, I'm DrLockdown, and today's diagnosis pertains to Transformers Collaborative, Hot Wheels, Twinmill, and Boneshaker. They didn't bother giving these cool names or anything, they're just the same names as the original cars. Still, with names that cool, do you really need anything else? Now, some of y'all might realize this isn't actually the first time Hot Wheels has crossed over with Transformers. We had the general car range based on existing Transformers characters, though those were a nightmare to find given the Movieverse range never released in Australia and the G1 range, minus a few randoms, was scalped to hell and back. I spent months looking for a Hot Wheels Optimus Prime and gave up the day I saw a scalper walking out with 20 of them at my local Big W. Christ, I haven't seen that shit since Earthrise Netflix Soundwave. Then we had the Mattel Creations release, a fun novelty that didn't really hold a candle to any other similar releases on the market. Horribly overpriced at a base level, even worse if you bought it through proper Aussie means, and even worse on the aftermarket due to horrendous artificial scarcity. And all that for a toy that, let's face it, wasn't even that good. But I'm not going to go into too much detail as I've basically done a full video on it already, but to summarize, if you missed out on the 7-minute drop, you're not missing much. Thing is though, none of these were what Transformers fans actually wanted. If you asked any fan on the street, they'd just ask you why we didn't have proper collaborative releases of Hot Wheels' most iconic vehicles. In retrospect, perhaps that was the point. Would any of these honestly have sold if these two came out first? I don't really think so. So they rightfully, in a marketing sense, held off on making these, and honestly, better late than never. Because goddamn the wait was worth it, at least in vehicle mode. Knowing next to nothing about Hot Wheels aside from vague memories of an old movie series that I watched at a friend's mother's holiday home over crust pizza, and the fact that Mainframe did something for the franchise and reused the old Beast Wars Megatron model, probably not on the same show mind you. So I'm going into these as standalone vehicles, and as those, my word are they sexy. I guess it makes more sense to start off with Twinmill, given he's the more normal of the two, but I actually got him second, so I'm gonna f around and do the opposite. Boneshaker turns into a masterful hot rod, not that hot rod, and one that's pushing the Black Convoy effect hard. Based on the original black version of the design debuting in 2006, but featuring far more in the deco category because making this thing entirely in black at this size would probably turn it into Velocitron G2 drag strip, which, no thank you. Now I suppose there's not actually much to say in terms of the quality of collaborative vehicle modes. Usually they're pretty well realized, so this being damn good isn't anything out of the ordinary. It's supposed to be the main focus to keep the collaborating company happy after all. But even so, this is just gorgeous. The black plastic has this subtle gloss to it, so it ends up looking incredibly premium. Matched against the flame tampograph, it's a really striking deco that you don't usually get on stock Transformers. You can't tell me Hot Rod, yes that Hot Rod, pulls anything this hard. The yellow is a little inconsistent and thin in places, but it doesn't usually come across as such on a glance thanks to the red pinstriping. Not often a feature you get to see on mainline figures, if this can even be called that, but very nice to see nonetheless. These flames burst forth from a gorgeous pipe section, curving around the sides and giving this almost the shape of an arrow. The silver that coats them is also fantastic, and it shows up all over the damn place, including the badass skull at the front. it. Really helps to bring out these mean as f details. Love to see it. It's accentuated extremely well with the red and yellow. Again, these applications could be a little stronger, but also again, given the amount of really cases I've seen, this doesn't even scratch the lower levels of the barrel, let alone reach the bottom. Would have liked to have seen some black on the eyes, but they're more so meant to be air intakes, so it makes sense. See, my car knowledge is getting better. I watch the Grand Tour now. I'm absolutely a manly man, oh yes. Silver also dots the piston section at the top and even the rims on the sides. And god damn, these wheels are something else. Bloody huge and rolling incredibly well with their pinned wheels. Though, I guess given Hot Wheels is kinda known for how well they roll, skimping out on pinned wheels would be a pretty awful decision. This is a really lovely car mode with a striking design and paintwork that really brings it to life. They could have easily made this like the original and not bothered to go the extra mile. Because why shouldn't accuracy be put above all else? Why should there be subtle deviations that actually make this thing look like a real car? I'm glad they've taken this a step further, and if anything, most of my complaints come from places where I think they could have gone further. For instance, I adore the interior. It really gives me Beachcomber vibes with the molded seats and the brown finish. But at the same time, couldn't they have gone just a smidge harder on the dashboard? I realize there's not the most space in there with the hinge and all, but couldn't we get a bit more? Couldn't we get a smidge more on the back too? The silver randomly stops, making this whole section look a bit unfinished. And the way the details around the taillights come across is rather toyetic. Maybe all of this comes down to the legal red tape surrounding Mattel, and maybe we should be glad this mode turned out as good as it did. But seeing how great everything else is, I just wish it went over the line. Also, for on floors, I guess the weapons storage is a bit shit. Apparently this is also undocumented. Maybe that's why. Funny Easter egg, but maybe not. Even with holding back in a few areas, though, this is easily one of my favorite alternate modes all year. 2025, that is, not 2026. Not sure when y'all are gonna watch this as the Wi-Fi card on my PC kicked the bucket and is preventing me from accessing Premiere Pro legally. Yes, I shouldn't have legally paid for Adobe, but I'm a lazy git and it was cheap through a deal I got. Whatever the case, this thing is $10 over the recommended retail price of a deluxe. Take, say, $5 of that and give it to Mattel. And even $5 over retail, this is still worth it. Yes, it's smaller than most deluxes, but it's also way denser and chunkier. It feels closer to a figure you'd find releasing in the late 2000s, in build, not size that is. Maybe a lot of that is down to the fact that this is literally a 2000s design, but whatever the case, this is a premium as shit vehicle mode. Though I do guess Boneshaker is overall a pretty complex design. A lot of his oddities come down to potential sacrifices they'd have to make to get it to work as a transformer. But what about when they cover something far more standard? Twinmill wasn't one I was actually planning on nabbing initially, for two specific reasons that will become more apparent later. These reasons put me off, making me think this was just another collaborative blunder, and $50 for one of those was a bit too large of a pill for me to swallow. Now $25, $5 above a core class, because the staff put out the wrong price on the shelf. Now that was something I was willing to take a chance on. And already from initial thoughts, I'm glad I did, because wowzers, this is a lovely car mode. Twinmill's inclusion in the lineup is basically a no-brainer, based on the 1969 classic. Apparently Hot Wheels' first ever original design, not based on anything externally. At least that's what the wiki says, so if that's not entirely true, I look forward to hearing a billion comments about it. For this specific release though, they've gone for the Spectra Flame rendition, just with a healthy dose of striping on the top. Likely so they can sell the original green later down the line. We've already got a Twinmill redeco leaked for next year, and that seems like a pretty easy spot for it. Nevertheless, this is one delightful car mode. I've seen it compared to both Blur and Point Blank, and yeah, I can see that, to be honest. People have even said it's a better version of those, but I think it's got enough of its own identity for the comparisons to be a tad silly. Still, this is one dynamic racer, with the aerodynamicism turned up to the max. The curvature is great, and the panel lines are minimal. Perhaps that's part of the licensing deal, like many a Studio Series figure had to deal with before, but either way, it's a lovely car. The clear blue is delightful over both the windows and lights. I kinda wish it was deeper with a tinge of neon, but it still looks really nice. The wheels are just the right kind of bulky, this time using the grey with painted tires trick. Still rolls well thanks to the pinned wheels, and it doesn't seem like it'll have paint chipping issues later down the line, so pretty good way to keep the sprue count down, I say. Interestingly, most of the visual interest doesn't come from the base plastic. It seems like it's got a metallic fleck to it, and it does, but it's a lot subtler than you'd expect. And the gloss finish isn't as pronounced as you'd think either. There was actually some slight controversy surrounding this, as the prototype was far more resplendent. And this was a clear cost-cutting move. As someone who went in on Tensegrity Prime for the same reason, I absolutely feel your pain. But no, the main course is easily the paint game, with the Tron line decals making this theme seem almost cyberpunk. They're crisp, bright, and help hide a lot of the blemishes really well. Part of me wishes they'd continue down the sides as well, but the budget was probably already stretched really thin here. Like, again, this is a dense motherfucker. They put a lot of effort into this thing. Like, even the underside is as clean as a whistle. Hell, someone on Boneshaker as well. Was this a stipulation from Mattel? Probably not. Does it have any bearing on the final verdict? No, as people seldom display or play with their figures from the underside. But hey, it's still about as dense as a 2000s harem protagonist. I'd add anime to that sentence, but let's be honest, what other mediums were telling harem stories in the 2000s? Of course, again, he's not without issue, and this time there's a slightly bigger handful of them. For starters, the air intakes on the top really should have had some extra silver on them. When just the pipes on the side do and nothing else does, it seems a smidge unfinished. Guess they had to use that budget on the color matching in the middle, which is almost perfect, mind you, so I do get it. Ironically, it's slightly more resplendent than the rest of the plastic though, which is kind of funny. Secondly, the rest of the paint around this thing is super thin and wispy, with a lot of blue bleed underneath. On both the Autobot symbol and the tail lights, they just look dull, and it's a real shame. The yellow at the front already looks great, and that's an equally difficult color to get right. Just wish they'd done both on the same high level. Thirdly, and this is a personal thing, I'm not a fan of the gaudy Hot Wheels logo on the back. Wasn't a fan of it either on Boneshaker, but like, it just makes this thing seem a smidge toyetic. Hoping Toy Hacks lets you cover it up somehow, though since I'm probably the only person who doesn't like this, it's kinda doubtful. And finally, the accessories. He comes with 2 blast effects, which I will not use because apparently they cause chipping issues with the silver paint. Did they not think this through? Couldn't they make it standard blast effect compatible? Whatever happened to blast effect compatibility? So many figures these days are just leaving it in the past, and it's like this was one of the coolest features ever. First, they stopped making new blast effects, then they removed the compatibility entirely? Come on, play features are fun. Still though, at the end of the day, this alt mode was a wonderful surprise. The flaws are there, but most of them make sense in the context of the release and can easily be explained away with budgeting and licensing constraints. The density remains great, even if on a slightly lesser level than his wavemate, and design-wise, he contrasts very well. It's a smidge difficult to decide which of the 2 alt modes is nicer. Not that this is a Versus review, mind you. Boneshaker is a far more solid piece overall, but Twinmill does look nicer. But at the same time, that does come with a lot more jank, so it's hard to say. Guess I'll just cop out and say I like them both? Yeah, that works. Though, the vehicles were never what turned me off from either initially. They're collaborative figures, of course that's what's going to be the primary focus. No, the reason I was a bit hesitant, as well as the reason I don't tend to go crazy right off the bat, is everything that comes after. Much like the vehicle modes themselves, the transformation feels very 2000s. It's sort of a mixture, the way the parts are very clever, like the original classics figures from the mid to late 2000s, and the modern brilliance, the modern cleanness. It's a perfect blend of classic and modern, and I guess that kind of works for this throwback, being a Hot Wheels crossover. Of course, with Twinmill, we have to discuss the elephant in the room, the parts forming, and this is what initially put me off this figure. You see, I really didn't want to get this thing when I heard you had to parts form these pieces here, and you do have to. These side parts won't fold out if that doesn't happen, and the chest piece won't fold in either. I thought, well, if that's what they're gonna do, there's no way I'm buying this. But there is one thing I didn't realize. They're not just random parts forming pieces, they are actually weapons. Yeah, you rotate the air intake at the back and it becomes sort of twin-barreled guns here, and that bit also pops off later for the robot mode. So yeah, these are basically weapon parts forming, so you can pretty much throw away that one issue I had out the window. These are fine, you don't have to worry about it. Yippee! And the rest kind of works the way you'd expect. It's sort of simple, but it feels very clever. You want to pull the chest piece up a little bit and use the double hinge to get it out. That will allow you to open up these side panels and untab it from all of that stuff and click it into place there. You can separate this, allowing you to bring this hinge out on both sides. That'll be the ankle tilt right there, but it does also have a ball joint, which means you can rotate these toes towards the front and bring down these heel spurs like so. You'll then notice that there's a slot here and a tab there, and that's how this all locks together like so it doesn't just slide down. I do quite like this Combiner Wars style of leg extension thing that they've been doing all these years. It is way better than sliding rails, and I'm glad this has become the standard. I don't really talk about it enough, I say. Anywho, you want to rotate the waist around, separate the arms down like that, rotate them to the sides there, rotate the chest around 180 degrees, bring this panel up and slot it into place, and then that will slot into place there. Now that is a really cool way to bring the chest into place, and I really hope we get to see this again in future designs. Do kind of wish that's where the Autobot symbol was. Kind of having it on the sides there is a bit silly. Anywho, last but not least, you want to bring these down. They're on several hinges. You just extend all of them, and you rotate them into place like so. Kind of goes to show that Point Blank didn't need to work as complexly as he did. It could have been a lot simpler, but oh well. This is still pretty damn good for the size and works really well. Especially with the way the arms work, that kind of throws back to Classics Mirage with the way they fold in. Combined with the more modern way that the legs work, it's just a brilliant transformation. I quite like this one, if you couldn't guess. Though, out of the two, Boneshaker is easily my favorite. He pulls the classic vibes even harder and does some really cool things with his panels. They don't necessarily work that great in robot mode, as I'll get into later, but it's still really fun to flip back and forth. It's a great desk toy. Anywho, first thing you want to do is separate these panels from the sides and bring these up like so. That should give you enough clearance to untab the back section and bring it down 90 degrees. We're not going to do everything else yet, because first off we're going to separate these, bring up the seats and move them backwards so that you can use them as heel spurs, which will allow you to fold that panel inwards there, and that will allow you to bring up this panel and use it to cover up the foot on its double hinge. Double octagonal hinges, well that's not octagonal, that is. And then that extends and does the rest. Nice, creative, and unique transformation. If they looked better in robot mode, this will probably be my favorite transformation element of 2025. But again, we'll get into some of that later, but still pretty good. Separate the arms from the sides here. You then come to the top and bring this section open. That will allow you to bring that down and lock it into place. Then bring the arms into place, and they won't lock into place because there's actually two tabs there that go into two slots there. So that will all go together like so and lock into place there. Got to follow that order of operation so that it all works well. You bring the shoulders down like so, rotate out the elbows and the wrists, and all works well there. And last but not least, if you haven't already with these just fold towards the back there. There's no locking tab, and I really wish there was a mechanism to keep them in place, but they sit there and they don't get in the way, and they don't seem like they're going to be load bearing, so it should be okay. So yeah, although these two lead to a bit of mess on both of their respective robot modes, the transformations are very nice. It feels more like they came up with these designs based on how the transformations would work, not try to force the transformation into the whole thing, which is what a lot of modern Transformers do. It is a very nice change of pace, and I am quite grateful for it. I'm grateful that this gives that classic transformation experience that I've been missing for so many years. So I guess these are classic Hot Wheels cars, so it kind of makes sense. Right off the bat, I really appreciate that these are ground-up new characters. Let's face it, they could have easily made these another Optimus Prime and Megatron, endlessly combining existing ideas because the average consumer will absolutely be more into it. Granted, Takara is way more guilty of this than Hasbro, but still, it could have happened. But no, these fall more into the traditional style of collaborative, giving us original robot modes, which in this day and age is a real treat to see. And furthermore, they're not just simple designs with the hood draped over, which is what put me off a few supposedly quite good releases recently. No, these are brand new, designed fresh from the ground up, with really interesting designs. And Boneshaker charges forth with a metal as f vibe, looking like a bikey gang member, but one of those based ones that protect victims of domestic abuse and punch turfs in the face. I've seen people say this should be a Decepticon, but aside from likely not wanting to piss off Mattel, who are you to say whose alliance should be whose? What are you, gatekeeping ideologies? The design moves a lot of kibble around really well, and it feels really complete, or at least from the top half. The head sculpt is great, looking like he's wearing a proper rounded face mask, and incorporating the pipes into the head excellently, crowned off with a killer crest, and you get a nice balance of meanness and friendliness. The torso it sits atop is damn nice, and a lot of the layering and paint actually works to create a more slender physique. Unexpected, but really nice. I've seen a lot of complaints about how low the shoulders are, and yeah, kinda. But when you have the tire shoulder pads, it doesn't really come across that bad at all. And it's a really cool place to put this detail, even if the panels don't really have a solid place to plug into. Not too annoying though, and it gives this a real flowing feeling to the back. Capped off with some really nifty orange forearms with top level paint application in the face of both yellow and red mixed difficulty, and the top half is just a real treat to look at. Great job. Now, what about the other half? Okay, now I have to preface this. Everything midriff down, although a downgrade, is not bad. I have seen way worse, especially in the collaborative line. Still pissed off that review got copyright struck. F***ers. It is, however, compromised. From a distance, it's not too bad, and a lot of these issues I didn't even come across until starting the scripting process. But by the same token, midriff. Flat as underscores corporate shuffle, hollow as the earth in the Monsterverse. But like both of those instances, it's intentional, not a side effect of laziness or poor budgeting. This is where the arms go in vehicle mode, so I do get it. And it still looks good from most angles, which is more than I can say for toys that suffer from similar issues. Also more than I can say for the legs, though. These are a mess. Thighs are lovely with their extra black paint, but what am I looking at here? Kneecaps sunken into the kibble, panels galore at the front, front, and what is this ankle tilt? Where's the rest of it? Like most of Collaborative, this suffers heavily due to wanting to keep the alt mode pristine. Not as bad as his wave mate, and certainly not as bad as the shit Collaborative has pulled before, but for fuck's sake, this feels almost unfinished. Weirdly though, I don't hate it. I should despise the way this looks, but it honestly doesn't bug me that much. I think the deco is doing a lot for it. The black convoy effect is very much a real thing, and it's pulling it hard. Plus your attention mostly gets drawn to the flames and wheels, which, yeah, sure, that's fine. You don't even notice the hollowness from the back, not that it's that bad anyway. Certainly better than the upcoming example. Yeesh. And hey, at least you get some killer bend with it. It is, in fact, that deep, and everything else mostly works well. It's really just that pesky ankle that pisses me off. Like, come on. At that point, it would have been better to skip the ankle tilt altogether and use that budget elsewhere. Otherwise, pretty standard articulation, minus a wrist swivel, but who cares. Accessory-wise, you get this gear shifter thing? Look, I get it's probably thematic to the design, but it looks stupid. And why did this have to be the only Autobot symbol on show? Couldn't you put it anywhere else? Red paint is lovely and it's built solidly, but it's still a bit silly for someone who's just a Transformers fan like myself. Probably missing some important context, but whatever. Boneshaker's robot mode actually surprised me a lot more than I was expecting, but mostly in terms of the reflective look. I really loved the design when I first beheld it, but looking at it closer, yeah, it does have more jank than I initially realized. Still hasn't hampered my adornment, mind you. This is one stylish as toy. Curiosity with alt aesthetics aside, it's just a really nice deluxe, an uncharacteristically nice deluxe for Collaborative, and for a reasonable price too. Yes, that's what happens when you smash the creativity of Hisashi Yuki, whom needs no introduction for those who've seen previous videos, and the chunk factor of Korki Yamada, a much newer designer who's had a spottier track record, sure, but has delivered some absolute bangers in recent years. I actually thought that initially this was a first for Collaborative, showing off the designers proudly, maybe indicative of them using the regular team instead of whatever the Collaborative team does on their own. But no, they've apparently been doing that since this abomination, which I completely forgot about because I've desperately tried to purge that shit from my mind. So it's probably more likely that they just let the Transformers team do their thing more, rather than slashing the budget and all we hold dear. Though if you want surprises, honestly, Twinmill is a much bigger one, because going in, I expected to hate this thing. And yeah, don't get me wrong, it's still a jankmeister. Proportions are all over the place, bits feel unfinished, and stability could definitely be better, but by the same token, this isn't bad. It's got the same charm and style as Boneshaker, which I guess is fitting considering the same two designers worked on him. They definitely feel cut from the same cloth, which is appropriate. Head sculpt is, again, lovely. Not as stylish as Boneshaker, but still very nice. The blur influences definitely come across a lot more here, though it feels way more 2000s-y, like it jumped right out of Robots in Disguise 2001. Maybe this could work as a sideburn stand-in? I've seen some folks float the idea around, given the hatred for the Legacy outing. Funny though, considering this car design predates even Torso is lovely, using the existing shaping to its advantage. Now this is how you incorporate an iconic vehicle design into a Transformer. This is the real effing deal. Combined with a crisp and solid midriff, and this Twinkin shoulder pads is just about ready to hit the dance floor. Do wish said shoulder pads had the silver highlights that the prototype had though. Seems like a lot was cut from this release, which is a bit of a shame. The Aqua makes its return, and it swapped out its Tron line stylings for a more classic 1982 Tron polygonal look. It really pops and helps make the shiny blue look complete, especially on those shins. Dear God, those look fancy. I kinda wish they were a bit deeper with their etching, but considering this has to form the underside of the car, I can cut it a lot of slack. And they really are beautiful. I mean, they even incorporated the exhaust pipes into the detail itself. That's damn fine if you ask me. Though, this is where you start to see the cracks form. For starters, the balance is way off. The thighs are super short even when you consider they're supposed to extend to the joint below. And the shins themselves are ridiculously long. Then you've got those beady little feet that do very little to ground him, and it's like, yeah, you really sacrificed this for the sake of the alt mode. Way more than Boneshaker too, like, hun, come on. But the worst bit by far is the hollowness on the insides of the legs. I don't usually mind hollowness when there's a reason for it, and this definitely has a reason with the licensing constraints. But this is just too much for me to overlook. Even on a good day, it's just there. Couldn't you do the old Combiner Wars dead end trick? Or have an extra panel in there? This is the same issue I had with Earthrise Double Dealer. It's too much. It's scaffolding. Going into this release, the hollowness was my primary issue with this design, and one of the two reasons I initially didn't pick this fellow up. The other was of course the parts forming, but after realizing it was creative weapon usage, that no longer became an issue. But you know what? I'm glad I did give this guy a chance, because this actually doesn't bother me that much. which, yeah, I'm surprised too, this should piss me off, but it's honestly manageable. I think a lot of it comes down to his size being a much smaller and compact deluxe. It's not as visible and out there as you'd see on a big computer screen. It's still there and a tad annoying, but not to the point where it ruins the figure. Maybe my judgment is clouded due to the fact I didn't pay retail for this, but even so, it's genuinely not that bad in my eyes. And overall, it's a remarkable robot mode. Not quite as resplendent and put together as Boneshaker, but still rather good. Just wish the posing wasn't as rickety, but oh well. It's not hateful and you can still get most of the poses out of it. Only thing I really wish they'd done is allow the elbow joint to have a double joint, as the joints are there but locked off due to the robot mode sculpting. Had they made it a bit rounder, it would have been really nice, but oh well. You can fan mode it to achieve such, but it looks buckled and weird, so I don't tend to. Accessory wise, the intake and side exhaust sections become really cool underslung flamethrowers. Still not risking the flame effects, but they're nice regardless. You can even remove the intakes and hand mount them, cleaning things up and giving him twin pistols. It's a nice option, but I prefer the bulkier look of them still together. Without a trench coat, the aesthetic just doesn't do it for me. Still, lovely option to have. Twinmill is janky in robot mode. The shins are naught but scaffolding when they could have easily put the extra kibble on the arms, especially as an original design. Not sure why the vast majority of modern Transformers are so allergic to arm-mounted kibble, but it is indeed a pattern and I have noticed it. But even so, he's still really lovely. The robot mode is very much a breath of fresh air amidst all the bullshit hypertune accuracy we see so much of these days. It accentuates style in other modes, instead of flat adherence to getting everything perfect for standing on a shelf. In both collaborative and the rest of mainline, so often they have several clear ideas and refuse to compromise on one or two, leading to an overall feeling of blah. This makes compromises where it needs to, and it leads to a better overall experience. And it's original, it's something new and exciting, born from the ashes of Hot Wheels nostalgia. I didn't go into these with nostalgia for the original designs. They were able to win me over with their own original charm, which isn't something I can really say for any other collaborative figure I've handled. Even Gigawatts and Tyrannicon, my previous favorites, leaned heavily on the brilliance of their War for Cybertron counterparts, especially the former, drawing from one of the best molds of the decade. There's more to these than just nostalgia, and for a toy line that's 95% nostalgia, 5% trying to slog the world with more Stranger Things merch, which itself is a nostalgic show for the 80s, so scratch that I guess. Point is, in a toy line where nostalgia is the main focus, that's a really nice change of pace. Surprise really isn't something you get often in the franchise these days. Every time they make something new, they have to beat it into the ground and ruin it, leading back to the same old safe nonsense with the same old safe characters. How's the 2026 lineup of Studio Series doing? Y'all ready to replace your War for Cybertron figures, even though they were already fantastic? Well, except that one, that makes perfect sense. And even at the level of quality we have, just being good isn't anything special. We're still in the golden age of the unification era. Things are slipping, make no mistake. But overall, we're still in an age of impeccable quality. You gotta give us something fresh, something exciting, and these figures are a rare case of that. I think both solidly fit into the same score. They've got their issues, but this isn't a case of their issues bringing the score down. They're easy enough to overlook, and there's enough class on show to get them above. Yes, you are paying an extra $10 for the licensing, and they do put the budget into smaller, denser, and better painted releases, which might not vibe with folks who prefer raw plastic value, parts count be damned. But they worked for it. They actually go the extra mile. They marry older styles of Transformers engineering we don't really see with modern slimness. I expected them to be fine, but these aren't that. They're damn fine. If anything, this is actually a worse case than if they were just outright terrible, because now I'm going to be second guessing all of the collaborative releases and actually thinking they're good. I mean, these actually have me excited for the upcoming releases next year, or I guess this year, because apparently this train isn't ending yet. I mean, a Twinmill redeco seems like a safe enough bet, and the Scorcher seems like a fantastic design, though it might need toy hacks to truly shine. I really hope they don't just make the front of the car the torso, maybe give him wheeljack-styled feet, or have them on the shoulders or something. I don't want to be like this. Why do you have to give me hope? Oh well, maybe it is fool's hope, but for better or for worse, I'm on this train, on account of 2 pretty damn good releases. But as always, fan and public consciousness is a conversation, so drop your thoughts on the state of collaborative below. Have you felt my distaste for these figures in the past, or have you always loved them? Do you have any hope for future releases, or do you feel they'll crash and burn now that they've got everyone's attention? Apologies for going silent for very long, it's been a crazy few months. Was half made redundant due to budget cuts where I worked, found work elsewhere, got sick due to the stress of constantly applying for work, dealt with finishing my capstone at university, finally got a job, worked ridiculous hours, got sick again, and then found out the job lied to me and was only a Christmas casual position, not a permanent one, so I'm back to square one. Then the Wi-Fi card died, locking me out of everything. Then my phone finally broke while trying to browse Instagram because no applications exist anymore and everything is just a Chrome wrapper with memory leaks galore. So now I'm finally back in a stable position and $2,000 in debt. Yippee! Legacy video is still coming and it's shaping up to be something quite spectacular, but it needs a bit longer. But until then, as always, remember, there's a context for everything. Till next time, God, I need a break after this.